Hey, everybody. Welcome to the HealthBabes podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Becky Campbell with Dr. Crystal Hone. Today, we have my good friend, Sal Di Stefano from Mindpump on. We had an amazing conversation. We talked a lot about how behavior dictates different outcomes when it comes to health and fitness. We talked about the pressure from social media of how we view ourselves and what that's doing to us when it comes to health and fitness. We talked about loving yourself like you love your child. We get into that a lot. And we just talked about how we can reframe our relationship with food to feel better overall. We just hit so many really, really amazing topics. So we hope you love this episode. Hey, everybody. Let's welcome Sal Di Stefano from Mindpump to the show. We're so excited to have Sal. We've had Sal on before. We've been a guest on his show as well. And if you guys are not watching Mindpump and listening to it, you have to. It's like the best podcast. I mean,
it really is.
It really is.
I really appreciate you. Yeah, you both are amazing. You're obviously my favorites, two of my favorite people. Becky, I've known you for a while, but yeah, to hear that compliment from you, it means a lot. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So I really love how you talk about behavior and how it dictates like different outcomes when it comes to health and fitness. So can you kind of go over that?
Yeah, it's interesting because as I think back to kind of how I came to the conclusion of the importance of your behaviors, right? And kind of what drives the things that we do when it comes to our health and fitness. I'm pretty sure the impetus or the kind of the peeking into that came from functional medicine practitioners. You both do that quite a bit in the sense that you look at the root, you look for the root cause, right? So when people tend to have symptoms, we tend to treat the symptom, but we don't take all the steps typically to look and find like, why is this happening? What's the root? Let's fix that so we don't have to treat the symptom anymore. And that's kind of the approach that I came to as a trainer. Now, as a trainer, and this is full disclosure, it took me a long time to learn this. I would say I was terrible probably for the first 5 years, and I wasn't that good for the next 5 years, so 10 years. And then after that, I started to kind of figure it out. And it really was because I just wasn't seeing the kind of success with my clients that I wanted. You know, people would hire me, and they would get fit and they would, lose weight and all that stuff. But then if they stopped seeing me, they would stop doing it at some point. And so the fail rate really was too high. The success rate wasn't great. It was almost like the success rate that we see in the average person. And there's a lot of data on this, when people start diets, regardless of the diet. So this is how you know that it's not the mechanistic, steps that we take, that there's something else, right? I don't care what diet you look at, Mediterranean, paleo, vegan, carnivore, whatever, the stick rate, or should I say the fail rate, is north of 85%. People lose weight all the time, but almost everybody gains it back and is worse off later on. So we need to stop looking at the steps. Those are important. Like the things that you're doing are important. But what seems to be more important, or at least what we're missing on, is the why. Like, why are we struggling with this? Why is this so hard? And really, it goes down to our behaviors. And I guess to put it differently, it's our relationship with health and fitness. And this is a story that I've told many times on the show. So if you've heard it before, I apologize. But years ago, and this was like kind of the first time I started to figure this out a little bit. I was at a dinner. This was with my ex-wife. She worked for a tech company, and they had this Christmas dinner. I think it was Christmas. And so I'm sitting with all her coworkers. So nobody's in the health and fitness space, right? These are all tech people. And we're sitting at these tables, and everybody's introducing their spouses. And, of course, at the time I was a trainer. And as soon as I say that, everybody, makes the typical comments like, oh, don't look at what I'm eating, or, I'll only have one piece of bread. And they make the jokes. But after that, everybody realizes I'm not, that kind of trainer. And so we all start to loosen up and have a good time. And, we're all enjoying ourselves, having some wine. And this woman across from me, there were people asking me questions about working out and diet, and I'm answering questions. And then this woman across from me interrupts, and she goes, Sal, she goes, I had a friend who was super into fitness, super into eating right. And then at 45, she got breast cancer, and then she died. And she says, and, you know, after that, I just said to myself, you know, to heck with this diet and exercise stuff. I'm just going to enjoy my life. And, you know, I've heard that before, not specifically that, but the whole like, oh, I stopped following that diet, or I stopped going to the gym because I just want to enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And for the first time, though, because I've heard that so many times, but for the first time, I remember thinking how strange of a statement that was, because there's almost nothing that will improve every facet of your life. Like, I don't care what facet of your life that you can think of, whether it's being a parent, being a partner, you know, being an employee or a business owner, just being a better person, whatever, innovation, creativity, sleep, you know, sex drive. There isn't a single thing that improving your health won't also improve. So for all intents and purposes, being fit and healthy makes life so much better. Okay. And yet I hear people say all the time, I stopped doing that, or I stopped pursuing that to enjoy my life. And I said, God, that is the strangest thing.
Yeah.
And then I realized it's because of the relationship that people have with those things that is making their life more miserable. It's not the fact that they become more fit and healthy. Of course, that's not making their life worse. It's the relationship they have with those things. So what does that mean? Let's look at that, right? So in that context, diet or trying to eat healthy is all about restriction. It's all about, I can't. I'm sacrificing all this amazing stuff for doing this stuff over here that I really hate. Okay. Exercise is a punishment. Oh God, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to beat myself up. I got to go through this gauntlet of grueling activity and then survive. And, you know, that I got to do it. It sucks. I got to wake up and go do this thing, and I don't want to, but I'm going to do it because I want to look better. And so, yeah, of course it's going to make your life more miserable, because you're doing things, or you frame things that are so great for you in a way that really they suck. You hate them. So that's when I started to think about this and say, okay, what are we doing wrong here? And really what it goes down to is, what it kind of boils down to is, you have to, and this is going to be an oversimplified way of explaining it, okay? Because we can get deeper on it, but we pursue eating healthier, and I say we just generally, that's most people. We pursue eating healthier and we pursue exercise from a place of self-hate, from points of insecurity, okay? I'm fat, I'm unattractive, I'm inadequate, you know, whatever. So I'm going to do these things, and because I don't like myself, okay? So then diet is restrictive. Of course it is. I don't like myself. And so this is what you hear from people. You offer them, when they're in that mode of self-hate and they're doing the diet, and you offer them, let's say, a food that, you know, is, let's say, like a slice of pizza or something that's classically unhealthy, right? They'll say something like, I can't have that. No, I can't have that, right? That's a weird thing to say. What do you mean you can't?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want it, or you want it.
Right.
But who's saying that you can't, right? Who's the tyrannical dictator that's telling you that? Well, you are, right? You're telling yourself. It's like you're this child that, and you create this alter ego that's like, you're stupid, you're fat, you're whatever, you can't do this, right? And then when you go to the gym, at first, by the way, it's cathartic to beat yourself up in the gym. So you'll hear people say this when they first start this out, like, oh my God, I saw this picture of myself on Instagram or Facebook. I can't believe how fat I am, or whatever. I'm going to go to the gym. And at first they love the pain. Oh my God, what a great workout. Well, what do you mean? Oh, I almost threw up, or I could barely walk out of the gym, or my God, me and my friend were taking that class and we were looking at it and I could barely breathe. What a great workout. What do you mean a great workout? Well, it's cathartic, because when you hate yourself, it's like, it's like what the ancient monks used to do, right? They used to whip themselves with the Cat o' nine tails or whatever. It's like self-flagellation, right? It's that cathartic punishment, because I'm such a bad person. Well, eventually you get sick of hating yourself, and then it just sucks. And then you stop because you just want to enjoy your life. So that's the place that I started to go to as a trainer. And what I found was tremendous success. I mean, it was night and day success. I went from being this, in my area, popular trainer that people would hire to, get in shape. But then if they stop with me, they got out of shape. If they stop with me, they go off the diet type of deal, to becoming a trainer to where people would hire me and they never would stop. Not being with me, but they'd never stop this, for lack of a better term, lifestyle. Like, I haven't trained anybody for 7 years, right? About a year after we started the podcast, I stopped training people. And I'm friends with a lot of these clients that I worked with. None of them have stopped. All of them have developed this relationship with exercise and nutrition that's stuck with them. Now, none of them are fitness fanatics, but that's different. I'm not going to turn, that's a mistake a lot of trainers, I think, make, or a lot of fitness people make, is that we communicate to people as if we're communicating to ourselves. You're not going to, if you're watching this and you're struggling with this, like, you're not going to become a fitness fanatic. Obviously, you aren't now. And if you were, you would probably work in the space. But what you can do is develop a relationship with these things where you do them because you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, that's how it is with our patients.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
They feel so well. And the
Mhm.
way we try to approach it is, we're not saying these are all your restrictions for life. What we're saying is, these are the things that are going to make you feel really well. And then they do feel well. And we have that advantage too. They come to us not feeling well. Then they start feeling really good, and they want to continue that. And then they'll do something that makes them not feel well again. And they'll go, wow, this is the way I used to feel. I don't ever want to feel that way. And that's why they're so compliant.
Yeah, you get what's called a positive. It becomes a positive feedback loop, where I'm doing this for the right reasons. Like, I'm taking care of myself. I deserve to be cared for. I'm, loving myself. And I put that in quotations because that's such an abused statement, which, let me clarify. When you're loving yourself or loving your partner or loving your kids, we think it's the feeling. It's the feeling of love. My friend, Dr. Arthur Brooks, says the feeling of love is like the smell of Thanksgiving dinner. It's the evidence that it's there, but the smell is not the dinner. It's just, there's evidence that there's a Thanksgiving dinner. So the feeling of love comes and goes. I mean, I have 4 kids. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't always like them. So, as a parent, you got to be honest with yourself. Sometimes you don't like your kid, but you love them. And the love that I'm talking about is action. You choose to love them. If you have teenagers, like, this becomes like a daily practice where you're like, okay, I'm going to choose to love my kid right now. Well, you got to do this for yourself. So loving yourself is the action, right? Not the feeling, because the feeling, it'll come and go. So for people watching, don't get confused. You're not going to have the feeling of love, especially if you're in a place where right now you're trying to, improve your health or whatever. So take that step. I'm going to care for myself like someone I care about. I'm going to love myself, again, action. And then you start to do things more appropriately. By the way, this is how balance is created with nutrition, is the occasional slice of pizza or cookie or whatever. You create balance, right? Because is there value to eating, cookies and pizza? Yeah, there's some value. Like, there's people in our space who are so, like, they divide everything. And what's the value of those things? Well, they're hyper palatable. There's a hedonistic value. When do I find value of those? I mean, if I haven't seen my cousins in a while and we're going to go out, we're going to have some beer and pizza. And the food isn't necessarily good for me, but the value is there because we're bonding, right? So you create balance. Exercise.
Especially being Italian, Sal.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, we find lots of value in those things, right?
Yeah.
And then the exercise is, you do it more appropriately. You don't overtrain. You don't beat yourself up. You actually go to the gym and take care of yourself. And then you start to see the results, because when you do it right, results become consistent. You don't get the, like, oh, I see results and then plateau. It's like, wow, my body's still progressing. Wow, I feel amazing. This is amazing. And you create a positive feedback loop versus the negative feedback loop that we create when we do it the wrong way, which is, I hate myself. That's already negative. I'm going to beat myself up. I get some results, then the results stop. So it's like, I hate myself and I'm not getting results. Negative feedback loop. Want to enjoy my life. I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do this anymore. And that's where people end up. And there's a lot more that goes to this, that goes with this. And there's strategies and techniques to develop or practice this. Because if it's not happening naturally now, you have to practice it. But when you get there, or as you get there, it's great. And you develop this this lifelong relationship where you don't stop. It's just something to do.
And I love how you talk about loving yourself and treating yourself like you would take care of your own child, right? Because that's so important. You would never like do this all or nothing approach with your children when putting, health in there, when you start taking care of them or like feeding them or putting them on, giving them more of an active lifestyle. It's not, you need to treat yourself kindly because this all or nothing approach, it's not sustainable.
No, it's not. It's not only not sustainable. Well, yes, there's more to it, right? It's not sustainable because this is human psychology, right? If I white knuckle this, right? Like, oh, like I hate myself, got to do this. And then I go off a little bit. I don't know what the term is in psychology, but you don't go off a little bit. It's like, well, I already messed up. Then it's like the dam broke and I go way up. So when you talk to people who are in this place and they go off their diet, it's not like they did, it's not like they had a slice of pizza or a cookie. It's like they ate a whole box of cookies to the point where they were nauseous and they hate themselves. And then you repeat the cycle. And then, oftentimes people are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go back there again. And so they don't go back there for a long time. And then maybe they repeat it again. But what happens is statistically, after like 3 to 4 times of doing this, they never try again. And I say we because I'm in the health space. We lose them forever. This is what the fitness space has done so terribly, is we've actually we capture people who are in this space, right? This negative / motivated space. We're motivated by these negative feeling towards ourselves. We capture them, but eventually we lose them forever. And people stop. By the way, it's no wonder why the health at any size, body positivity movement has become so distorted. And it's become a thing. That is literally a bunch of people who've given up. They've done what I just explained. They've given up, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, body positivity to me means doing whatever I want and loving myself. Well, compared to what you were doing before, which is you were hating yourself and exercising and hating yourself and trying to eat right. Well, yeah, it probably feels a lot better. So it's no wonder we've created this movement.
Yeah. And just like you were saying, love is not just a feeling. It's not just how you feel about yourself, but it's an action, which, by the way, my mom has always told me, like, even relationships, she's like, that's because he doesn't really love you. Love is not just a feeling, it's an action.
Yes.
But she's right. And that is true with yourself as well. And you can do these things like exercise without punishing yourself. You can do it in a loving way. That's why I love the workouts that I do from you guys, because it makes me feel good. I don't feel like I'm punishing myself. I feel great after. And if I don't do it, my body doesn't feel as good. It's not my mind telling me I'm fat. It's my body going, you know what? You're more anxious today because you didn't get in the gym and lift weights or go for your 2 walks or whatever,
Yeah. And to just kind of add on that, right? Someone might be listening and going, well, okay, well, why would I necessarily want to keep doing this? Why would I want to keep eating healthy? I get the whole caring for myself. I get that, but I don't like the taste of some of these foods. And I genuinely don't like the feeling of exercise. I mean, even if I do it right, there's still some pain involved. It's still a stress on the body, right? So like, how am I ever going to enjoy that? And this is when I remind people that you develop relationships with practices over time. And that relationship goes from struggle, I'm doing this because I care about myself, to actually enjoyment. And now I want to. So I'm going to use some silly examples. Okay. I'll use an example that a lot of people I think can relate to. Most people, when they were children, when they were kids, hated the taste of black coffee. I don't know any kid that if you give them black coffee, tastes it and goes, yum, this is delicious. Okay.
Right.
Okay. That's because objectively it's bitter. It's not sweet. It really doesn't taste good. And yet there's millions and millions of Americans, adults, I mean, people around the world, who eventually developed a fondness for the taste of black coffee. Like, I love the way black coffee tastes. That's the way I take my coffee now. I love it. Now, when I was a kid, you could give me coffee flavored candy. That's about as far as I would go. But now I love it. Now, what happened? What happened along that process? Well, most of what happened is that as an adult, you started drinking coffee because you got, whatever, life is busy. I got to wake up in the morning. I need that caffeine. You start associating the great feeling of caffeine with your morning thing. Now it's a routine. You stop taking creamer, then you stop adding sugar. And now I love the taste of black coffee because I've developed that relationship with black coffee. Objectively speaking, black coffee tastes far worse than any healthy food, than any traditional healthy food you'll ever eat. And yet you love the taste of black coffee. So that's an example of how you can actually get to this point. So when people hear like genuine health and fitness people say, I love the way healthy food tastes, a lot of them roll their eyes like, yeah, right. It isn't, no. You can develop a relationship with these things through this practice. It just has to start with awareness, but eventually it becomes this natural, automatic kind of relationship. So how does that start? Well, if you start out with this self-care, self-love approach, you go into it with awareness. So like, okay, I'm caring for myself. These are things that are healthy for me. Okay, I'm going to eat this food. How do I feel right now? How do I feel after? Then you'll start to notice like, like I don't have bloat. Like I'm not bloated, or wow, I have way more energy, or my digestion's really good. And then, you get these other effects that happen a little later. Like my skin looks a little bit better. My mood is better. My libido is healthier. My hair looks better. Like, wow, like, I feel like genuinely really good. And then you also become aware of how, some of those hyper palatable, let's say just generally unhealthy foods affect you. Like, wow, when I'm really stressed out or upset, that's when I crave those really bad foods. Okay. Because you become aware, right? You're practicing this, and then you eat it and you're like, oh, I feel terrible. I feel bloated. I can't sleep.
Yeah.
My digest, I didn't realize that the reason why I have to eat Tums every day is because of that unhealthy thing that I eat. By the way, when I was a trainer, it used to blow me away. I would train people that would, take like antacids every day, not knowing that their breakfast that they've had for the last 10 years is what was causing it. And then we would change it.
Right.
Right. Their bagel in the morning, or we hear that a lot too.
Oh, it'd blow their minds.
Yeah.
And so then you start making positive and negative associations. And then what ends up happening is you start to crave the foods that take care of you. And you start to really not like the foods that don't. Now, why are we in the place we're at now, where we crave the foods that don't take care of us and we don't like the foods that take care of us? Why are we here? Because in modern societies, we all have grown up in plenty. Okay. Everybody alive today, for the most part, unless you're 90, you never have really dealt with starvation. You've never dealt with, any issues. You've had access to almost any flavor or color or texture or even, an ethnic type of food. And so what we've done is we've built an association or relationship with food that's really based off of one thing: hyperpalatability.
Mm-hmm.
Really. And we've ignored everything else. And it's not your fault. It's just the way, it's a side effect of the fact that we've done a damn good job of solving starvation. And then markets are so good at giving us everything we want, not necessarily what we need. So, and your evidence is, if you ever talk to your friends about, getting lunch, what's the conversation sound like? Hey, you guys want to get Chinese food? Let me think about that. No, I don't feel like Chinese. I feel like Mexican. Oh, what about, and you're completely basing your decisions off of the palatability. So the relationship you have with food is totally distorted. So when you start to work on this other type of relationship, what you'll find is you'll start to crave foods that serve you, and you'll start to not want foods that don't serve. It's really no different than like being in toxic relationships one after another.
Yeah.
You work on yourself, and then you're like, I don't want to date people like I used to want to date, because I don't crave that like I used to. It's really not that different from that.
That's where I am right now. I'm like, if I never date again, I don't care. Really. Like, I'm so happy alone. Me and my kids, I'm like, and my friends, I'm good. It's true. That's a really good comparison. It is how it is.
It is. And you know, I know this is like, oh, God, we're going so deep, and oh my God, what does that look like? And that sounds so challenging. Well, look, first, I want to acknowledge that it is challenging because you are changing fundamental behaviors.
Mhm.
So how we eat and how we move are fundamental behaviors. You've probably been eating a particular way or had a relationship with food in a particular way for years and years and years and years. And so it's challenging in the sense that you have to, you know, to change your outside, you have to change your inside. And to keep it permanent, it's got to be a fundamental switch or change.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen overnight. It is a slow step-by-step process. It is a, you know, for lack of a better term, awakening. You know, I don't like to sound like us, you know, like those guys that are promoting like spiritual practices or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is somewhat, you know, that's just the best term I have. But I do want to encourage people, the process yields results the whole time. So it's not like you have to get to this like perfect place before, wow, the weight loss is happening. You know, I feel great and I look good. Every step you take, however small, you'll notice something. So it's this wonderful snowball effect where kind of starts off small, slow, and then things start to accelerate. And then before you know it, you're like, this was my favorite comment from clients. This is when I knew I was doing it right, is they'd come to me and they'd say, this is really weird. They would always open with something like that. This is really weird. Like, I'm losing weight. I'm looking amazing. And I don't feel like I'm like doing a lot like this. Like, I don't feel like this is not a struggle. Like, what is going on? I'm like, this is the place you want to be. This is how you get there permanently, you know? So it's there. It's just, and it is a process, but it's the only way that this will happen forever. Everything else, you're going to fail eventually. So if you want to do this, this is really the only approach. There is no other approach.
So true.
Right.
It's so in line with what we teach too, you
Mhm.
know?
For
Yeah.
sure.
It is because you guys care about your patients and you're looking for long-term success. And eventually that's where you get to. You get led there. And if you ignore it, yeah, you'll keep doing the same stuff over and over again. Like, there's a lot of trainers out there and fitness, you know, influencers or communicators that they're just doing it the wrong way. Part of it, again, is that fitness people who do this for a living were fanatics, and oftentimes we forget that we're not talking to other fanatics, and or people who get into the space oftentimes do it from a real strong point of insecurity.
Mhm.
There's more body dysmorphia in the fitness space than there is in almost any other space, right? So
Especially go look on Instagram. I mean,
Oh my gosh. Social media. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it's like therapists. Therapists tend to become therapists because they try to figure themselves out and they make a career out of it. You can actually read statistics on that.
mhm.
It's like that with trainers. So the way that they communicate and what they're telling you to do, it's like they're talking to themselves.
Right.
This whole like food is fuel, you know, like they've literally disassociated any of the experiences of food, and it's this like robotic, mechanistic, like food is fuel, carbs, proteins, fat. That's all you got to do. And it's beast mode. Ignore the pain. Go to the gym. Crush yourself. And it's this glorified, false message. And all they're doing is making things worse. So, yeah, and you know, it's interesting too because if you look at the data on the effectiveness of diets versus the effectiveness of therapy for weight loss, guess which one is more successful long term? Therapy.
Yep.
Therapy.
Makes sense. Same with us, just like patients working on trauma and stress for their health. You know, it's very similar concept as that. Sometimes that's the thing that it's the turning point for patients.
You know, you want to get real weird. So I have a friend that she's a psychologist. She's brilliant. And we were having this conversation and I had this thought and I wanted to confirm it with her. And I said, you can't separate the mind from the body. So what you think your body will act upon, and vice versa, what happens to your body, then your mind starts to work with as well. So this is why the placebo effect is like a real thing
Mhm.
in clinical trials. because what you think actually start to cause things to happen in your body. We know this now. This isn't really like a breakthrough, but I said, I wonder if hating yourself over years, like, body dysmorphia, for example, or, oftentimes trauma victims will really hate themselves. They'll internalize whatever happened to, especially if they were children. I hate myself. Whatever.
Yeah.
I said, could that signal the immune system
Mm-hmm.
to identify the body as an invader? It's like, I hate myself. Immune system reacts and says, oh, this is a bad thing. Let's activate an attack. And she said the data on people with trauma and autoimmune diseases is very clear.
Very.
Much higher percentage. How crazy is that, right?
Yeah. That's why with a lot of patients, we have them focus on, their mental health before we can even start to see turning of the corner with lab work and all this other things that they're doing physically for their bodies. But mentally, it is such a huge piece of the puzzle.
It is. I used to train a lot of doctors, medical doctors. I used to have a wellness studio, and I was like maybe a mile away from Good Samaritan Hospital up in Los Gatos. And at one point I trained a doctor. They referred their friends, and I had all these clients that were doctors. And I used to love talking to them. They were really, really smart people, really good people. One of them did pain management. Okay, so if you're in like chronic severe pain, you go see this person, and they figure out how to treat or work with your pain. And I remember we got in this conversation about pain, and he said, pain is one of the most strange, complicated things that you could ever work with. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, there's the physiological, like we've identified what's happening to you physically and physiologically with pain. We know there's pain receptors and, inflammation and chemicals that are being produced that cause or take away pain. He goes, but then there's the relationship you have with the pain, this perception of the pain. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, and this is such a brilliant example. He says, Sal, when you work out, I bet you feel as much or more pain than a beginner does. And I said, oh yeah, no doubt. And he goes, but you probably don't suffer while they suffer. And I said, oh yeah, that's really interesting, because I would train clients who are beginners, and I actually have had this. Trainers will tell you this with beginners. They'll drop a dumbbell or let go of a cable because of the burn. They don't have a relationship with that pain. They'll freak out, or they'll get sore and think something's wrong with them. And he says, that's the relationship. He goes, you can image 100 people's spines, and you'll find all kinds of, slip discs, herniated discs, and issues. Half of them will feel lots of pain. The other half feel nothing. And he goes, and it's really weird. And then he says, when in pediatric surgery, you'll operate on a child, and they'll have a surgery where if you did this on an adult, you're like, lay in bed for a week, take all these super strong opiates. And the kid wants to jump out of the bed and run around because they don't know that they don't have the same relationship with the pain. And I thought, man, that's really strange, and that's really interesting. So, our relationship to our body, boy, is that a very powerful thing. And it's not some mysterious, thing that just happens. You can practice and work through. And when I say practice, it's not automatic at first. So trying to learn how to enjoy exercising and eating right and taking care of yourself. At first, you have to you got to make yourself aware of it. Like when a baby learns how to walk, they have to think about every step. Eventually you just walk. So you have to think about it. Like, I'm stressed. How do I feel? I want to eat this thing when I'm stressed. Wow, isn't that interesting? When I'm stressed, I crave this. When I get bad sleep, I want to eat like this. Isn't that strange? How do I feel now that I'm eating this? How do I feel after? Wow. Okay, I'm going to the gym. Why? I know last night I ate a lot of food. How do I want to work out? Well, part of me wants to beat myself up. Why do I want to do that? I'm trying to burn off the I'm trying to punish myself. Isn't that interesting? And you start to really piece this together, and then eventually it becomes this kind of automatic thing that, is kind of natural. It's a fun process, by the way. If you do this with yourself, it's a fun process, because every step along the way, you're like, wow, that's cool. Ooh, that's interesting. I kind of like this. Wow, this is working the way they explained it. And again, by the way, I said this is the only way to succeed. There is one other way, but it's so rare that it almost never happens. The epiphany. where, and you almost never see this, but this is like where the guy gets the heart attack, almost dies.
Yeah.
And then he's like, that's it. I'm changing my life forever. It's so rare that people get heart attacks and still don't change their life. People get lung cancer, don't stop smoking. So don't rely on epiphanies. It's probably not going to happen. So you're going to have to do this the kind of long way. You have to build this relationship consciously.
Yeah, for sure. I want to circle back to having realistic expectations with social media. You had made a comment about it's more common to be a millionaire than have a six pack. I heard you on another podcast.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on that? Because I thought that was so important.
Yeah. What's weird is that, so this is a subconscious thing that happens. Without realizing it, you will internally compare yourself to what you see most of. Okay. So if I was constantly going to NBA basketball games and watching these 7-foot monsters run up and down the court, I'm 6 foot.
That's what they are, 7-foot monster.
Yeah. So I'm a 6 foot tall guy, right? I would start to subconsciously create this narrative that I'm short, even though I'm taller than the average person. So if you're on social media and you're constantly looking at airbrushed, photoshopped, body dysmorphic, or maybe just genetic lottery bodies constantly, without realizing it, that becomes your world, and your brain, your mind compares yourself or positions yourself in that world. And so you will view yourself as less attractive, less normal, less fit by default without realizing it. So how do we change that? You have to consciously change the algorithm of your social media, consciously follow and unfollow pages, and consciously consume content that improves how you view yourself, and not watch the things or look at the things or consume content that makes you feel bad about yourself. So, like, to give you an example, they've done some interesting studies on what they call like wage disparity or income gaps. And in free market societies, you'll see these gaps. However, the poorest people are still far better off than in poor places with less market variability, where the gap's much smaller. So just everybody's much poorer, but the gap is smaller. And then in wealthy, kind of more open market societies, everybody's richer, but there's a bigger gap, right? And the people who perceive this gap and are exposed to it and look at it will be less happy than people who are far worse off, because they perceive this gap to be much smaller, because you subconsciously compare yourself. So, if you turned off all social media, okay, and you just walked around the real world, let's just imagine everybody had to walk around naked, and you're walking around the real world and you see real people who are naked all the time, you would not feel nearly as bad about yourself.
No.
As you do now. That's the world. That's reality.
Yeah.
That's reality. That's not when you're going through social media, that's like filtered for the 0.01% of the population. First of all, you're not looking at anybody over the age of 35.
No.
You're looking at body obsessed, body dysmorphic people, definitely unhealthy for the most part. There's a lot of Photoshop, a lot of perfect lighting, a lot of that kind of stuff. I've worked in gyms my entire life. Okay. So that's already a self-selection bias. People who work out, you do not see that in gyms. I don't see people with 6-packs walking around gyms all day. It's still super rare. So turn that shit off, because it's screwing you up, and it's making you feel like you're a failure when you're not. And by the way, I know we value physical attractiveness so high. I'll comment on that. 2 things. One, the best science on happiness. So I mentioned Dr. Arthur Brooks. I'll bring him up again. Great guy. If you don't know who he is, go watch his stuff. He's an expert. He studies happiness. Okay. He explained it to me this way. He said, let's say on an arbitrary scale of 1 to 5, 1 being like totally unattractive, 1 to 10, 10 being the most attractive person that people will look at. Let's say you're a 5, and let's say you spend, $100,000 on plastic surgery, you work out, you eat right, you do everything. It's like just so much time and energy going from a 5 to an 8. So you went from a 5 to an 8 in terms of attractiveness. He goes, you would barely or not impact your happiness.
Right.
People think it would make them so. He's like, it won't. It won't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you improved your health, that would definitely impact your happiness. But looking more attractive, it really doesn't. And then the second part I'll say is this. What's attractive in real life isn't what's attractive necessarily on social media. Okay. So, you meet that person who's genuinely healthy. I remember the first time I was a 20-year-old, maybe 19-year-old general manager. So I was a kid managing gyms. And there was this woman that used to come in, and she was just, I remember, like, excuse me, but me and the other trainers and the other guys in the gym were like, man, that woman is hot, right?
Mm-hmm.
She had like total, like, silver hair. Okay. 100% silver hair. She came in, she was just vibrant, just great energy, very fit. She used to work out, most mornings at 6 a.m. And we were all like, man, that is, young guys, right? So they're like, that's a, hot older woman or whatever. Cause we're all
a MILF.
A MILF.
Cougar.
So I thought, oh, this, maybe she's 45. I don't know. So I approached her one day and I said, and I was very blunt. And I said, you work out all the time. I said, you look amazing. Like, you're so vibrant. You're so attractive. Part of me saying that. I said, how long have you been working out? She's like, oh, I've been working out for almost 40 years. And I said, how old are you? If you don't mind me asking, how old are you? She was 60. I think she was like 63.
Wow.
I said, oh my God. She's
Awesome.
like, oh yeah, I do this and I love it. And it feels so good. But I remember how attractive she was because her health was it was just vibrant, right? In real life, that's how you'll see attractiveness. So I don't know if that brings anybody comfort, but like, being healthy genuinely is the most attractive thing that you'll do in the real world.
And her energy, right? And her
That's
vibe,
it.
all of that.
And her confidence too, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So, like, okay, I'll use another example. I've been to stage presentation shows, bodybuilding, physique, bikini, figure, and you see them on social media, and they have these pictures. You're like, wow, they look ripped. If you see them in person, they look like The Walking Dead. I remember being backstage. My friend was competing, and I'm seeing these competitors, and I'm like, oh my God, everybody looks horrible. You see their faces are gaunt, and they're so depleted and starved, and then I was like, oh, God, they always look good on the pictures, but in real life, you could just feel the poor health. You could see it. So I don't know if that gives anybody comfort, but we're really not fair to ourselves when we look at these pages and subconsciously or consciously compare ourselves. It's not real. It really isn't.
Well, it's social. Like, I'm just glad I don't have a daughter because of social media and the standards for women on there. I mean, God forbid you have a pore, on your face. It's crazy. And it's like, when you think about, let's say, the Kardashians, they're beautiful naturally, but then they've done so much stuff over time, and then people are copying them. And this is, I think, where the whole Ozempic thing started. And now everyone was getting huge asses, and then now everyone's getting really skinny again. And it's like, at what cost to your health, because, and I wanted to ask, and I'll circle back to this about Ozempic, but when I think of, just kind of to your point of the woman in the gym, when I look and think of a beautiful woman, I think Jennifer Gardner, Julia Roberts, like, because they are beautiful, but they're amazing. They're smart. They're funny. They're, they have that energy that you like want to know them, that type of thing. And we've moved so far away from that. Like, when I was growing up, that's, the type of people we were seeing, not these whatever Instagram models who are setting these crazy weird standards that people are following and looking weird. And especially in person.
Not to go too far off on a tangent, but it's interesting what is considered physically attractive is somewhat based on evolution and what we learned to perceive as fertile and healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. Or just healthy. Let's just say healthy. So, wide shoulders, small waist on a man, some muscle and strength. That demonstrates healthy testosterone, ability to protect, hunt, take care of yourself. Now, what have we done? We've distorted the hell out of that. You get bodybuilders with crazy proportions that are not functional. On women, there's a hip to waist ratio that they've identified that is the same in different cultures. So like in some cultures, they may societally perceive women who are this size to be attractive. And then this culture over here, they're much bigger and they perceive them to be attractive. And scientists are like, well, is there a common theme here? Like, why do people in this region think that women who are 30 pounds heavier than the people from this region consider them attractive? Like, what's going on? And they found it was this hip to waist ratio. And what that connected to was your ability to conceive and birth a child. So there's some roots in health, but what we've done is we've distorted the hell out of them, and we've developed this cultural, societal, accepted body dysmorphia. So, body dysmorphia, we now identify as like extremes, like anorexia, bulimia, bigorexia, which would be like the opposite anorexia, right? That's probably what I had as a kid, where I thought I always had to try and get bigger. But the reality is, if you look around, there's kind of this collective accepted, dysmorphia where we just alter and change our bodies, in order to fit this strange, I don't know, ideal that's kind of told to us. So I'm not trying to, go super crazy and esoteric with this, but it is interesting to be aware of, because then you can identify how, when you get extreme with yourself. And then here's the other part of it, which is, I don't know if you guys have seen the data. Do you know when the age that people have the highest rates of body acceptance? What age is it?
Probably older. No,
50s,
mid 60s.
I believe that, because I mean, the older I get, I'm like 0 Fs, man. Like, I don't care what people think, or or I'm growing mentally, spiritually, so it gets easier. But that, I hear that often. 60s.
You ask people, when do people look the best, right? And they'll say, some say 20s for women and maybe 30s for men. Men and women in their mid 60s have the best body acceptance.
Love it.
How is that even possible if you're 65 and you're not going to look like you were when you were 25? So that just goes to show you. The other part of that is, like you could try as hard as you want. You're going to get old. If you're lucky, you're going to get older.
It's called acceptance, right? We're all going to get old.
Yeah. And you're going to have to deal with this.
Yeah.
And what you don't want to do, you brought up the Kardashians, Becky. Like they're fighting, they're so struggling and holding on to nature, like holding on to and fighting nature. That's a miserable existence.
It is.
And we see what what they display, but we don't. Come on, behind the scenes, I don't think so. Like you're not going to gain true happiness through that pursuit. And at some point, you're going to be slapped in the face with reality anyway. And that's a tough, like, what are you going to be like Michael Jackson, or you just get so distorted with it that it's crazy. So it's a losing battle anyway. And look, just to kind of wrap this and seal it and sell it, because I know I have to sell these ideas. That's a very important part of what I do. Here's the bottom line. If you want to look better, you'll look better by going after being healthy.
Yep.
You will by going after trying to look better. If you just go after trying to look better, you'll lose your health and eventually you'll lose your looks. Fact.
Yeah.
But if you just try to get healthy, you'll become healthier and then it'll look better. So if you're listening right now and you don't care about all the other stuff that we said, you're like, yeah, whatever, I don't care, I just want to look better. Then get healthy. That's the best way to do it anyway. So bottom line, fine. Go get healthy. You'll look better anyway.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like people will go, what do you do with your skin? I'm like, it's more about what I eat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about what I'm putting on my face. It's what I eat, how much water I drink, how I exercise, how I sleep. It's more that,
100%. And that's really what a long-term relationship with this looks like. When you start to slowly figure this out, it's great. You'll enjoy it. You'll be consistent. You'll get great long-term success and results. All the things that you thought you would get by hating yourself, beating yourself up, starving yourself, and just valuing the shell, the outside. All the things that you think you're going to get by doing that, you actually get by doing, kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's true. I want to ask you, because I brought this up and I'm sure you guys hear a lot about this. What do you think of Ozempic and Wegovy, all that stuff people are taking.
Really interesting. These, what are they called? GLP-1
Antagonists.
yeah, of peptides. Really fascinating that, well, first off, do they cause weight loss? Yes. They make you eat less. I know that they were developed originally as diabetic drugs to improve insulin sensitivity, but that's not why people are losing weight. They just make you eat less. And what you see in the data is that people also lose muscle and lose bone mineral, bone density as a result. Why? Because if you just eat less without addressing, let's say, strength training, without addressing what you're eating, right? If you just eat less of what you're eating, or you eat less and you're not getting adequate protein, that kind of stuff, your body will adapt by typically reducing your calorie burning machinery, your healthy, your muscle. You want muscle, by the way. Muscle is extremely protective. So in the weight loss studies, you see this. You see muscle and fat. If you combine using Ozempic with doing what I'm talking about, where you're trying to develop a better relationship with nutrition, with exercise, when you're eating healthier, then you can probably see some really great results in similar ways to, I would say, the way people can use antidepressants, right? So an antidepressant isn't going to cure all your issues with depression. But if you use, let's say you're so depressed that you're in a hole and you just, I don't know if you've ever worked with anybody who really suffers from depression, like just getting them to do anything can be so hard. So sometimes what an antidepressant does is it just gives them enough to get up off the couch or out of bed to do the things that then really solve their issues, right?
Yeah, like that nudge.
Yes. Right. If Ozempic is used in that way, then I could see it being a plus. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people who are using it are not using it that way. So everything I said earlier is just as true with using a tool like Ozempic. I mean, that being said, this is the first real kind of weight loss drug, I would say, unlike the stimulant based ones that we kind of have in the past. It also, what's interesting about it, there's still some stuff we don't know about it. I don't know if you guys are reading that. People are also, not only are people losing weight, but they're also not doing impulsive behaviors that they used to do before. So people are like not smoking as much, or not drinking as much, or not biting their nails. So there's something else that's happening in the brain that, or I think at least, where it's working with pathways to reduce impulsive behavior. But again, if this is what's doing it and you're not doing the other stuff that we're talking about, the results will be limited. You'll always have to take it, and it's not going to get you there. It'll get you some stuff, but you're not going to get there. You're not going to get to what we're talking about. But if you use it as like a training wheels, and then you work through these things that I'm talking about, I believe it could be beneficial.
And then take them off, right?
Correct. 100%.
Yeah, I heard that. I was watching a video recently of a doctor talking about it, and she said that people are losing more muscle than they are fat, and so they're therefore actually more, and I don't really like to say it this way, but more fat, because they now have lost a lot of the whatever muscle they had, and their body weight is more fat than it was before. So
there's more to that too, Becky. So and just to kind of tag on to what you're saying, if you lose 10 pounds, but 8 pounds of it is muscle and 2 pounds is fat, you are now fatter as a percentage of body weight. So the total amount of fat on your body matters in relationship to your total body weight. So if you're a 200-pound man, 20 pounds of body fat is 10% body fat. If you're a 100-pound man, 20 pounds of body fat is 20% body fat. It looks very different. 20 pounds of body fat on a 100-pound man looks very different than it does on a 200-pound man. Okay. So if you lose a bunch of muscle, your body fat percentage actually just went up, even though you lost some body fat with that. But there's more to this. So first, let me explain why that's happening. If I just cut my calories and I don't tell my body to preserve its calorie burning machinery, its muscle, then what my body does is it tries to meet that new caloric intake by reducing my metabolic rate. And the most effective way of reducing my metabolic rate is by cutting down muscle. So if I just eat less, my body's like, we're not getting enough calories to support this current lean body mass. Let's get rid of some of it. So now we match that caloric intake. Okay. Now, the way you offset that is you do something called strength training, because strength training gives your body a reason to maintain or build the lean tissue. And you do want to combine that with a adequate or higher protein intake to fuel. Okay. Otherwise, you will lose muscle. Okay. And by the way, studies on this are super clear. It's like diet, muscle loss, diet plus cardio, muscle loss, diet plus strength training, fat loss, muscle stays the same or goes up. Now, there's even more to this, though. This is where it gets interesting, and I can't wait to see what this data looks like. Think of how your body pares muscle down. So your body's not burning muscle. I want people to understand that when it loses muscle through this cut calorie process, it's not burning the muscle for energy. People say, oh, I'm burning muscle. That's not what's happening. One of the last places your body will go when your calories are too low is muscle. It's a very ineffective, inefficient way of doing it. It'll eventually get there if you starve yourself enough, and then it'll start to actually eat away at your organs as well and bone. But muscle is not the first place to go. So you're not burning muscle, you're paring it down. Very different. Your body's adapting. What are the mechanisms by which your body signals itself to pare muscle down? Well, some of the strongest signaling chemicals in your body are hormones. Okay? Your hormones are literally that. They tell your body, they signal certain things. Okay. So what hormones signal muscle growth, right? In men and women, it's testosterone. Testosterone is a driver of muscle. And in women, testosterone is just as important as it is in men. It's just lower. People think testosterone, male hormone. You need testosterone if you're a woman, just like a man needs estrogen. Men need estrogen too. If you drop estrogen in men too low, we're depressed and anxious, and libido crashes and all this weird stuff. So you need to have these hormones. So if your body's trying to pare muscle down, one of the ways it does this is by reducing its muscle building signaling hormone, testosterone. So what you're probably going to see in these people who take Ozempic and do nothing else is lower testosterone. Mm-hmm. You're probably also going to see another hormone become dysregulated, cortisol. Okay. Cortisol is an energy producing hormone. It's healthy when it's appropriately being produced, right? High in the morning, kind of tapering off at night. If your body's trying to pare muscle down, though, what does cortisol look like? High all the time. Okay. So now you're probably going to see elevated cortisol. What about growth hormone? Well, growth hormone also is a muscle building signaler to some extent. Well, you're probably going to see depressed levels of growth hormone. What about estrogen and progesterone? It's going to be imbalanced. You're not going to see the right ratio throughout the month. So I'm going to guess that what you're probably going to see in the data eventually, and this is going to take a while, but eventually with people who take these, semaglutide and these other GLP-1 agonists over time, who don't lift weights or do strength training and who don't also try to modify their nutrition, they just simply take this and eat less, is you're probably going to see worse hormone profiles. By the way, the hormone profile I just described, the one that makes you lose muscle, is the getting older, what they would consider the aging hormone profile. The one that's the opposite of that, the one that builds muscle and all that stuff, that's the youthful hormone profile. So, I mean, if you take Ozempic and do nothing else, you probably over time will start to see this non-youthful hormone profile. So, and people are going to start to see that. They're going to go on this, and probably at first things will look better because they're eating less, and there's always health benefits to doing that if you're overeating. But then over time, you're going to start to see like, oh, I don't feel good. Like, what's going on? And people are going to start to realize this is not the magic pill that they thought.
Because there isn't one. There never will be.
No. Even if there is one, it's not going to be. We people ask us that question all the time, by the way. If there was a magic pill, that literally gave you all the exact, benefits of eating right and exercising, would you be supportive of it? And I tell people that it wouldn't be what they think, because a large percentage of the benefits you get from exercising and eating right is the pursuit, is the relationship development. It's the personal growth that you get.
Oh, it is for sure.
It's like, you guys ever look at the data on lottery winners?
Oh
Right?
yeah. Yeah.
The majority of them go broke.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
They're broke,
Quickly.
they're unhappy. Yeah.
Yeah. And why is that? Because they never developed the relationships with money and finance to become, I don't know, rich. They just given money.
Right.
So it's gone. So, even if we had a magic pill that boom, you swallow it, well, I get all the physical results. You're not going to get the same.
Well,
the
it's
same
like gastric bypass. They're
Mhm.
not dealing with the emotional aspect of why they were maybe overeating in the first place. And they do really recommend you go to group therapy and stuff, I think, but a lot of people don't, or they didn't have the tools to begin with. And then they lose all this weight, and then they start eating back the way that they did because they didn't handle the emotional aspect. And then they're making themselves sick. So,
Well, so I worked with a lot of gastric bypass people, right? So,
same.
yeah. And, so the data on this is really interesting. And this is why they suggest therapy and all that stuff. Although I think they should emphasize it more.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The rate of drug addiction, gambling addiction, pornography addiction, other addictions goes up in people who get gastric bypass
Why? Because
Yeah.
they're like just moving on to the next thing.
They
because it
can't
never.
eat, they throw
Right.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
If you take an alcoholic
Hmm.
and you take away alcohol, they never have access to alcohol. Well, they're not going to drink alcohol anymore, but they're going to medicate with
Yeah,
something else, right?
exactly.
And that's what ends up happening. The rate of all those other things goes up because they just can't eat more. How do I get rid of these feelings or numb myself or whatever?
yeah.
And they choose other things. And I used to work with clients like that, and it was really interesting. It was
Mhm.
a really interesting process, of that. But yeah, great example, Becky.
Yeah, it should be
Yeah.
required. I feel like
Mhm.
before you're allowed to get gastric bypass, it should be required that you are really dealing with the emotional aspect and of why you're in the situation, maybe.
Yeah.
Because it turns just to another addiction, whatever they're able to do. I mean, I see this a lot. I'm sitting here going, should I say this? But my family used to go to a church in Fort Lauderdale. It was like a mega church. And a lot of the people there were recovering addicts. And
Mm.
it was to the point where the religion became their new addiction because they weren't using the drugs and alcohol anymore. And so I think there was just an unhealthy balance. And it was like, the very aggressive religious people wanting everyone to, do what they're doing. And, so it was like just their new addiction, just their new thing to be obsessed about. And
Yep.
so I think all of that, any real obsession over a lot of things is an unhealthy place to be.
You can make anything a drug.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had two people who hired me who had to lose weight to get the gastric bypass. They were so big. And so they actually hired me because they said, my doctor came here and wants me to lose 30 pounds before I get gastric bypass. Okay.
Mhm.
So that happens sometimes. And one of them never got the gastric bypass
Yeah.
because we were able to do such a good job
Awesome.
that and it took them a while. I mean, it wasn't
Mhm.
like it didn't happen as fast as it would have with the gastric bypass, but they did it and they're still there. They're
Yeah.
still, they've maintained, and it's work, and that's an extreme case, right? I think when you get to that level, this is probably something you're going to have to be aware of for the rest of your life. I think
Mhm.
we can all relate. We all have that thing, right?
Yeah.
Obesity is interesting because it's so visible. So it's so easy to judge somebody who's obese because I can see it. I can't necessarily see a gambling addict or a sex
Right.
addict. Sometimes there's a lot of functioning alcoholics you don't even know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we all have that thing that we kind of, okay, this is where I tend to go. I got to work on it. But it can be done, and it's a very worthwhile pursuit because all the things you think you're going to get by just solving the symptom actually happen through the journey.
Mhm.
That's where you start to solve those things. So to what you said, Becky, with the religion or spiritual practice, there's a right way to do it.
Yep.
And that's
100%.
and there's the data will show this too, that when people go into it and don't abuse it like a drug, or develop that bad relationship, that becomes their way of finding purpose and meaning and dealing with the, because life is hard. Everybody has struggles
For sure.
for working with those things. So, and food is just, it's the most abused drug in modern societies by far. It's easy. I mean, there's no argument. What's the number one killer in modern societies? It's all related to food. And what we've done with food is, because if you look at like drug addiction, the most addictive drugs are the ones that produce the fastest, mind altering state, right? The fastest dopamine, the fastest, that's why it's more people are addicted to smoking weed than they are to eating it, right? Eating it takes much longer to hit, whatever. Smoking it much faster. So drugs that produce that immediate effect tend to be more addictive because they reinforce that process. What we've done with food is we've taken the quote unquote addictive properties and we've amplified the hell out of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's terrible.
So you go eat an engineered processed food, and what scientists have essentially done, and this is what they weren't literally trying to do this, but they were trying to make crush sales, and the way they do it is by making the food literally more like a drug.
Yeah.
When you eat hyper palatable, super processed foods, essentially what they've done is they've taken those addictive properties and amplified the hell out of them. So you eat, processed food, and it's far more addictive, far more. And in fact, it's so powerful, it'll alter the chemistry and wiring, for lack of a better term, of your brain.
Yeah.
Where if you eat a lot of candy, fruit tastes bland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. If you stop eating candy for a little while, all of a sudden fruit starts to taste really sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why with people that work with us, they first sometimes will be struggling, right? And then they're like, oh, wow, my taste buds are changing. Like they're actually tasting flavors of food again.
We don't have cravings, right?
Yeah. And then they'll go to eat something like they did before. And they're like, this is terrible. This is so rich. I mean, I think it was a Kentucky Fried Chicken came out with a burger maybe that had waffles as the bread.
Gosh,
like,
I want to vomit thinking about it.
That's so American.
It's like, I mean, no wonder people have a hard time. It's like, and then more stuff that you eat that's so rich, the more you need. It's that thing that causing that type of addictive.
It's funny on it's funny on all this. Yeah, what you're talking about, Becky, is the we've done a good job with markets, but markets serve our wants. They don't serve our needs. So,
right.
and we're humans are interesting, right? We always want what we don't need, right? It's like, I want more of this, that. It's like, that's not what you need. You actually need this, that, and the other. But look, this is going to get, if you don't develop this strategy now, moving forward, you're really going to get screwed, because all we're doing is we're going further down that wants cycle to the point where you almost don't have to move anymore. You almost don't have to get up, and you don't have to do anything hard physically anymore. You don't have to experience heat or cold temperatures like you used to. You don't have to go without food for more than 10 minutes if you don't want to.
You don't have to drive to get food. You can have it right to your door.
What's interesting, the science on this is pretty cool too. If you get that dopamine like rush from doing something that's, let's say, pleasurable, if there's no work that leads to that, you don't get the same production of things like oxytocin, vasopressin, these, bonding, satisfying feelings, right? So like pornography is like this. Quick hits, no oxytocin, dopamine. When you go pursue a relationship, you meet someone, you talk with them, you do the work, and then you get that, that sexual release. You get the dopamine, but then you get the bonding.
Right.
Yeah.
Working hard, making money, not working hard, getting money. Right. It's
two different things. Yeah.
I have family and a lot of family that works in banking and finance, and they'll tell me, the people that make the money, they're really, really good about it. Their kids are terrible.
Yeah.
Inherit, they show up and he's like, they're the worst people ever because they just got it. They never.
It's true. Work ethic and working hard. You're benefiting your kids. Make them work.
Make them buy their own first car.
Yes.
Like a old one.
100%. Or like, people are like doing these cold dips now, right? And they're getting like, oh my God, I love this cold dip. Part of the value is it sucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Throw your kids in there with you.
Yeah. What a great way, right? You imagine taking your kid who's throwing a tantrum.
Yes.
And it's the same with I've noticed, like, and you probably noticed this, Sal, if as a business owner, like let's say as a doctor, giving away a free consultation versus having someone pay for their consultation, the value that they see in it is much different.
I know.
Yeah.
In fact, they'll teach you that in marketing. They'll say, God, what do they call it? It's like a tripwire, I think is the term they'll use. So rather than giving this away, sell it for really cheap, but then you'll get a better response. So instead of giving this away for free, sell it for like $2 and you'll get a better response because at least people perceive it to be a little bit more valuable, more of it. I know it's interesting, but it's good to know about yourself as a person and a human. So there's value in what we talked about because of the results. There's value in the relationship, but there's also the value in the fact that it's going to be a challenge. It's struggle. It's something you got to kind of do and kind of work towards. And it just I think I've used this analogy with you guys before. It's like, you could take a helicopter ride to the top of Mount Everest and it'll still be beautiful and breathtaking, but is it going to be the same thing as if you climbed?
Not even close.
Not even close. Right. So, and it, that doesn't make it any necessarily easier to go through this type of stuff, but I think it does help. I think, and at least it helps me realize like, okay, there's value in the fact that this is hard.
Yeah, for sure. Sal, we just adore you. Thank you so much for coming on again. We really do. You guys treated us so well and we love all your information. Why don't you tell listeners about your book again and your programs and anything else you want to share?
So the book is The Resistance Training Revolution. You can find that anywhere they sell books. And then my podcast is Mindpump. You can find it anywhere, YouTube. So Mindpump podcast or any podcast platform. And then we just started something new. We interviewed somebody who's been in the fitness space for a very long time, very brilliant business person. And they commented on our business model and they said, Shalene, what's Shalene's last name? Johnson? Shalene Johnson.
Yeah.
She's super, and she's really blunt. That's why I like her. So she looked at her business and she goes, "You guys suck." I'm like, "What?" And she like broke and she said, "Why don't you guys have like a really low cost option for people to get at least some workouts?" And we said, "Well, because we want people to have the complete program and they want to do everything right." And she says, "There's a lot of people who don't want to take that first step that you're missing, and then they end up doing terrible workouts anyway."
Yeah.
Oh God, I guess you're right. So what we did is if you go to Instagram, Mindpump Media, you can actually subscribe for under $5 a month. So it's really inexpensive. And every week we post a workout.
That's great.
So it's not a full program, but the workouts themselves are appropriate. The exercise demonstrations are appropriate. And you'll learn how to do exercises and how to piece them together. So you could go there. So I'll recommend that to people. You don't have to get a full program. If you don't want to, you could just go to Mindpump Media on Instagram, subscribe. It's super inexpensive. And then every week you get a workout.
But awesome. I do recommend your programs. That's what Crystal and I both do your programs.
Thank you.
I have all of them
in our program because we love it so much.
in our functional medicine program, we refer to your program.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Thanks. Yeah. And we appreciate you guys too. There's not a lot of good people, genuine, authentic, caring, and smart people in our space. You guys are a combination of all those things. So this is why we have you guys, why we talk about y'all all the time. So appreciate what you guys are doing for sure.
Well, thanks for coming on, Sal. You know, I love you and your family. So
thank you.
It's fun spending time with you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. And if you love this episode, please leave a review. It only takes a couple minutes. And you can find out more about us on drbeckycampbell.com. And you can follow us over at Instagram on @HealthBabes Podcast, @Dr. Becky Campbell, and @Dr. Crystal Hone. Have an amazing day.